And what is next is a luxury dimension which is far more intangible. And we have identified a couple of dimensions. Them being space and time, personalized and individualized service and services, exclusivity, safety, health. Yet, however, it seems as if we're moving even further, and we're talking sensual luxury. It's about how to grab our five senses and putting this at ease into perfection for a luxury experience. When we talk about sensual luxury, about sensual experiences, and maybe I can just start off with you, Katrin. What importance does it play in your hotel, other than you come into the place and you have this great smell? Why are you doing it? What do you want to achieve?
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. Actually, it's, I think, nothing that new for us. Ritz-Carlton had always this sentence in our credo talking about the Ritz-Carlton experience enlivens all senses. So whenever we think about creating luxury experiences, we try to enliven all five senses. And I think guests coming to Oman and coming to Al Bustan Palace want to have a very local, authentic Omani experience. So we always think about what senses can we enliven that make guests feel, wow, I'm in a beautiful country and I'm experiencing Oman. So you mentioned the gentleman that is on my team, Mr. Mohammed, our famous coffee man that is in charge of making our Omani coffee every morning. And putting on the burner in the lobby. And it's interesting because guests that come into the lobby when he's not there, people saying, what's wrong, right? Where is the bahur? Where's the smell? Where's my freshly brewed coffee? So people want to have a very unique, authentic local experience, and it's about really pulling it through, right? What music are you playing in the lobby? What food are you offering? What smells do you have? And I think we have a lot of repeat guests in our hotel that come back to the palace for the last 30 years, and they step into the lobby, they smell that very authentic Omani scent, and they say, I'm back, So it's, we do a lot enlivening senses, not only in the arrival experience, but pulling it through the whole hotel experience.
And the one that you outlined is actually a brilliant one, that you look at a coherent experience that is delivered across all of the senses. So that you do not appeal to one specific experience with the acoustic sense, and with the visual sense you convey another experience, so that it's very congruent. This makes the combination very strong in the minds of the customers. Then you ask about the importance. The importance, when we believe in scientific findings, which I do, is very high. So the thing with the sensory systems is that it is the way we perceive the world. We cannot perceive the world without seeing, without hearing, without tasting, without touching something. And the senses have such a strong influence on us because we are not aware of them necessarily. So they happen unconsciously. And what we sense is what we believe. And for this reason, appealing to the senses is a relevant aspect in the design of hotels, of servicescapes, or retailers.
Or maybe you want to define what is happiness.
Yes. So two things. First of all, looking back at the sensory experiences, from the perspective of Buddhist psychology or Asian psychology, there's not five senses, but there's six senses. The sixth sense is the mind. And actually, the mind is the most important one because you perceive as much as your mind is able to focus on the experience, right? That's why, for instance, even in the West now, things like mindfulness have become very popular because people realize we live in a world where our attention is so scattered that really perceiving is not that easy anymore. So I think if you think of the five senses and nourishing them the way it's been described, which is wonderful, how do you create the environment that is peaceful enough and that is conducive for people really being able to take in the sensory experiences. Otherwise, we are bombarded with sensory experiences the whole day long, and we don't really notice them anymore. That's the first point. The second point is, in Bhutan, the idea of gross national happiness, first of all, makes a difference between pleasure and happiness. Right? Pleasure is short-lived and varies a lot from one person to the other. And happiness is something more grounded, that gives more of a life sort of experience, not short-lived, but like. And we believe that happiness is based on three main components. The one is connection to ourselves, and again, in a time where we're so dispersed, creating spaces where people can come back to themselves, become a bit more peaceful, look inward, and so on, is very important. The second one is connecting to others, the quality of human relationship. We all know how important human relationships are for our well-being or for our suffering, right? And the third one is connection to nature. And you were mentioning in the beginning this experience of just sitting in the desert and listening to the sounds of nature. So how can we design experiences where people can connect in these three fields? So peaceful spaces where people can really reconnect with their own mind, with their own heart. Then how do we create spaces where people can really be one another and not constantly be on their smartphones, forgetting that there's other people around? And how do we create experiences where people can really reconnect with the wonders and the beauty of nature? So I think these for us are three very important factors in happiness and well-being.
Reconnect with themselves. We see that a lot. They choose a destination where there's not that much happening, so there's not the pressure of having to tick off the list of sightseeing things. And a lot of families come. We see a lot of different generations traveling together now, because they say that's the only way for us to reconnect, is to bring parents and grandparents and brothers and sisters together. And then the people stay longer. I think in a lot of destinations, the stays are getting shorter. With us, we see the opposite. People want to spend more time. So a lot of our guests stay 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I think it's just the combination of having, the luxury facilities are all there, but you have that everywhere in the world. So they're looking for that in combination with beautiful people. I hear that a lot. People come to Oman because they just love that, that very gentle, very, very friendly, very peaceful approach from whoever you meet, and the nature, right? And that's why, glamping is such a big hit. So people want to have a luxury experience, but in the middle of nowhere. And that's been very successful in Oman for us.
But how can we increase the guests' mindfulness and awareness towards those sensory cues? And this is what you said. If the mind is not behind, I can have the best sensory design strategy and it will go unnoticed. It will have small positive effects, but nothing like a large or transformative experience, let's call it like that. So how do we create this mindfulness as a hotel? This should be the question in the first place. How can I offer my customer that she can connect with herself, that she can connect with nature, that she can connect with other social beings? So this is the overarching question.
And how do we do it?
So one way, for example, social relationships. Why don't you offer a CSR project that the guests can donate books to schools, to children, social interaction, something like that. When we talk about how can we create the awareness for oneself and for the nature, how can we build this reconnection, think about how you can prompt it. For example, have the people put off their shoes going barefoot. Yeah, there is one hotel who's practicing that. And if you go through the reviews of that hotel, you will recognize the customers significantly higher talk about it was a great view, the colors were vibrant. So they have much more sensory memories they take back home.
The ability of the mind to actually perceive deeply, right? So I think the starting point is not necessarily the senses themselves, but I would argue that the starting point is slowing down. We live in a society that has been like speeding up year after year. And there was a time where going on holiday was about, as you said, seeing as many things as possible and ticking off the boxes, and you would have these buses going from one place to the other, visiting 10 places during the day. And I don't think that many people would consider that really a very pleasant experience anymore. And one of the real luxuries is, do we have time for ourselves? Do we have time for others? Do we have time to sit in nature? And speed it's so ingrained now because of our lifestyle and electronic device and so on and so forth, everything right away, immediately. So slowing down, I think, is and the no-shoe experience has something to do with that, right? And so slowing down is kind of the precondition. Because once you slow down, you start to notice, the beauty of the color of a flower, the taste of a spring water. But if you're rushing, you don't notice anything. Right? And most of us are so caught up in their head, they're not actually perceiving, they're thinking all the time. Right? And you start perceiving when your intellect slows down a little bit and you have time to touch and smell and listen. And so coming back to the present moment and really experiencing deeply is really a precondition. And then moving away from our very head-centric kind of life and experience to, for instance, experiencing our body. And that's why I think the barefoot thing is so interesting, because normally you don't feel your feet when you walk. You're not even aware that you're walking. You're just thinking of where you're going. But when you walk barefoot, then suddenly you notice the difference of texture under your feet. And suddenly you're aware of your body. So coming back to our bodily experiences is really the door to the senses.